he would be the one that Revelation spoke about, the second coming, which there is no story to foretell what happens when he comes back. Because the first story by other authors is in the Bible, but the second coming of Christ is nowhere. It just says that he's going to come back. And I visualized, because I was playing computer games, you got to realize I was playing computer games in the early 80s. And I was at USC Film School, and I thought, well, if Christ came back, he'd be born again, he'd come through the womb, and what would be waiting for him in the future? Technology, the machines. He would have to go up against the machines. And what would be happening in the future? There would be clones. There would be hologram clones. There would be all type of machines. There would be all type of programming and downloading and scanners. There would just be chaos. And this is how the story was born in me. I had vision, sight, and it wasn't a dream, but to see what our future would look like. And if everybody can buy the book and see and look at the copyright, excuse me, they can even go to Washington, D.C. and compare it and see that it's authentic. That I was actually talking about scanners, downloading, and then when you see Trinity telling Tank, download me with a program so I can fly this helicopter, that actually came from me. And
How much of a role did George Orwell's 1984 play in setting the emotional tone of mechanisms interacting with organisms?
Well, I don't know, because I never saw the movie. I heard about the movie, never saw the movie, but I came up with, I think, for a greater concept, just like when Mary Shelley did Frankenstein. What she actually saw was, in the future, there would be these soulless bodies, and they would be clones. And she could not describe it in her particular, in the 1800s, so she was talking about sewing body parts together to create a human being. Well, every person in their particular era, and them being a seer, and I say that Mary Shelley was a seer, that's how she described clones. And me being a seer, I foresaw that in the future they would have these clone bodies with chips in them. They would be cloned with human brains. They would have chipped implants. They would have chipped implants made out of manageable silicon, like chipped livers, lung, kidneys, and hearts. They would take a licking, but they would keep right on ticking. So my concept spans way past anything that any of the old writers were doing. Clearly, a long time into the future, which my new work even extends into greater things of what's going to happen in the future. There are people like Rod Sterling and Ray Bradbury and other people who created The Outer Limits who have the sight, and they can only describe them in the particular era that they were born in or grew up in or knowledge of. But
one of the delightful things about the third eye, and I think everybody will be pleased when they realize that upon reading, and it hit me a little late. I'm a kind of a slow class person, slow bus guy, but it was like maybe my second time around, Tom, when I got the book. It was my second time around that it dawned on me that I was reading something that was written 30 years ago. Now, I'm getting it in 2010, but I have to sort of fix my brain, and I have to go through the pages and remind myself, Sophia, what she did that really has to be commended. Now, of course, because people haven't seen the book, they just don't know. But she actually was able to accurately forecast the use of computer games to acquiesce the youth to fight computerized warfare in the future. Now, that's a common thing we see, Modern Warfare 2, Call of Duty, PlayStation, etc., etc. That's a common thing we see now. But to be able to think about that 30 years ago when the most computer games had to offer was Pac-Man is remarkable.
That's a great point, Ed, and there's a parallel to that when when Louis Armstrong became famous, it was largely because he could play a higher note on the trumpet than anyone had ever heard played before. And by today's standards, high school kids play higher notes than that. It's the same sort of thing. You've got work building on work building on work, and we look around now, and we're carrying flash drives and keeping whole encyclopedias on a little chip that we carry in our pocket. And you're talking about a 30-year-old piece of work that envisioned that.
Right.
I want to get back to influences a little bit, and we just have a few minutes left. But I'm just fascinated about the influence of what media was available and what got you interested in that world. And you said that you were a seer. Is there a distinction between someone who is able to like being psychic, having psychic ability, and someone who has tremendous imagination?
Well, I try to tell people, because a lot of people are very confused as to what a seer is. They read about Edgar Cayce, they read about Leonardo da Vinci, and they read about Nostradamus. And these guys were able to see through to other dimensions of time or time travel. And that's what the Matrix and Terminator, it's really time travel work. And we're able to see things that other people cannot see, and it's nothing to do with imagination, because Leonardo da Vinci, they say he invented the submarine, the Gatling gun, the parachute, and I say that
helicopter.
The helicopter. He was able to access other dimensions of time and space, that he could do that, and I myself am able to do that because, look, creativity comes from numbers. Engineers, architects, they create through numbers. Like, I was doing taxes when I was 11 years old, 7th grade. I scored a 98 on the IRS exam. On my first law exam, I scored 100, perfect score. You see what I'm saying? So
but that creates an interesting sort of circle, because if you look to the future and you see things and you then describe those things, you become the creator of those things.
Well, that's what I'm saying to you. Like they was talking about Leonardo da Vinci, he created and he invented all those things. And you got to realize, when you go back in my book, I have invented a lot of stuff, and I've already seen the new stuff in the future that's going to be shown in Matrix 4. I already have seen the new inventions that are yet to come. Can you imagine that? I had already described the iPad and the iPhone in 1999. I got interviews that go way back that can prove it, and people who are witness to what I'm saying. So going and looking in my book, I mean, it's going to blow your mind, because there was no downloading. There was no, like, when you see them, like, their bodies are in the ship, and they're fighting with their Kai, with the Kai, the second body, or the shadow body, is going up the telephone line. That's the second body. I break down all three, that we're three-dimensional people. In fact, I'm talking about 3D in the book also in 1981. And so that's mind-boggling also. But if people can look at the book, I mean, they're going to find even more incredible things that's in the book that's occurring right now. It's prophecy. The book is actually living prophecy.
Two things
unfolding as we speak.
I got to say a couple of things real quick, and we've got to wrap this up. But this is a fabulous conversation, and we could go on and on and on. And Ed, thank you for joining in and being part of it, because it's coming up on 5 o'clock where you guys are, I think, and you're up in the middle of the night, and I appreciate very much you taking the effort. I also want to shout out to Johnny Rivera for putting me onto this story, because it is fascinating. But since we could go on and we're out of time, I want to make sure that we share with people some ways that they can dig into this story and find out more, because it is very interesting. Both not just your work that's